Welcome into episode 495 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. The Boston Bruins found a way to kick off November on a positive note. They defeat the Carolina Hurricanes in what was one of their, if not their best effort of the season, I would say, start to finish. It was a good competitive game by both teams, and enter the third period scoreless. One team had to break the ice, and it happened to be the Bruins. They get a 2-0 lead and eventually hang on for the 2-1 win.
Yeah, it was. I think it was their most complete effort, their best game, considering the opponent. And I know Carolina was shorthanded, but that's still a team that had been playing well. Their defense, especially down Jacob Slavin, Keandre Miller, Shane Gostisbehere, all out. But to me, like, that doesn't take a ton away from it. Like, I don't know, a lot of teams are banged up. Everyone's kind of just muddling through this early season. There's been a lot of crazy results kind of every night, a lot of close games. I don't think we can really like nitpick wins for this Bruins team. They just need wins. Like, they're just trying to build some confidence, and they're back to 500 now at 7-7. I think we're going to get into a little bit of what the Eastern Conference looks like, because it's kind of crazy right now if you look at the standings. But if we want to go right into opening shifts, mine is about one of the biggest reasons that they won that game Saturday, and that was to play Jeremy Swayman, who comes back in after getting benched for 2 games. Jonas Korpisalo started back-to-back games for his first time as a Bruin in the year plus that he's been here. And that led to, kind of a mini goalie controversy, some fun talk radio. We talked about it on Friday's podcast. Where do you go from there? Do you consider giving Korpisalo a third straight start? And ultimately, Marco Sturm, probably with input from goalie coach Bob Essenza, decided to go back to Swayman on Saturday. Sturm was asked about it pregame and said, but basically what he said all along, which is early in the season, we're probably not going to ride either guy for too long. It's a very compact schedule. They want to keep both guys fresh. And so he goes back to Swayman, and Swayman answers the bell and ends up stopping 28 of 29. Some quality chances in there, especially early on. I thought that first period, Carolina had some real point blank looks that he had to be ready for. And that's good. Like, that's exactly what you wanted and needed to see from Swayman after, a pretty disastrous start Monday up in Ottawa. So now, once again, you're at a point where you probably feel pretty good about both goalies at the moment, given that they've both been good their most recent time out. So, I think that's a situation that ultimately, check in favor of Marco Sturm on how he, could have potentially turned this into a big goalie controversy if you handle it wrong, and all of a sudden that's all everyone's talking about. Well, instead, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of goalie controversy talk after you get Swayman back in there and he plays well.
Yeah, and my opening shift has to do with something Marco Sturm did as well. And I guess just his coaching style we're starting to see more and more of, but he sat Mason Lohrei for the third straight game. He was asked about it before the game against Carolina on Saturday. And I'll read the quote, and it got a lot of reaction because I think people were happy to see that he's handling players who aren't playing well in this way. So he says, someone asked, why is Lohrei scratched again? Or, how do you want him to feel about it? And he says, he should be pissed. He should be very pissed. He should be upset. He works hard in practice. He's ready. He just waits for his opportunities. But I think that's the goal, having him out there and be a little bit different when he comes back. And he talked about it with Casey Middlestat too. He healthy scratch Casey Middlestat earlier in the season, and he thinks that he's played better since he came back, and is now knows what the expectation is, how he has to play, in order to stay in the lineup. And now Mason Lohrei is going through that too. He's been up on the 9th floor, watching the game from there. And he is expected, the message is, if you keep making those same mistakes that you were making before, you're going to be back on the 9th floor. And he's hoping that the kind of shock value of being scratched and knowing that like you might not play helps straighten him out quicker, I guess, to learn the lessons.
So if I were to tell you guys before the season started, hey, Boston's going to start the month on a 3-game win streak to start the year. They're going to finish the month strong, winning 4 or 5, even though the last one was technically I think November 1st. Pretty good start for the Bruins. Well, I know the obvious question will be, well, Brian, what about in between? Well, there's the caveat, right? You lose 6 games in a row. How damaging were those 6 regulation losses for the Bruins right now? Well, as I said, they've won 4 of their last 5. Right now, and I know you guys know this because we were just talking about it before we started recording, but perhaps listeners might not realize this. The Bruins are dead last still in the Eastern Conference based on points percentage at 500. Now, granted, 500 normally isn't bad enough to be dead last. Rarely ever at any point in the season. There's usually somebody that's really struggling. In the Eastern Conference, the Bruins have the most games played, and like I said, their 500 is last in the conference. Now, granted, it's not that insurmountable. Everybody's hovering around a game or two from each other, so 1 win here, 1 loss there, the seesaw goes. But it just goes to emphasize that the Bruins' hole they dug themselves into is going to be now probably a season-long battle, because every week is going to be a big week. And you look at the next 2 weeks for the Bruins, 5 of their next 6 games are against divisional opponents. You go to the island to play the Islanders coming up here. Then you have 2 games against both Ottawa, who just kicked your ass 7-2, despite their unimpressive start to the year as well. And they're still without Brady Tkachuk, but you have 2 games against them. You have 2 games against the Maple Leafs, and you have a game against the first place Montreal Canadiens, who are as exciting of a team as there is in the NHL right now. So every week's a big week for the Bruins, but these next 2 weeks are going to be massive for them. They really are.
Yeah, it really is crazy looking at the standings. Like, so you mentioned points percentage. If you just look at pure points, there's 4 teams at the top that all have 18. Montreal, you mentioned, also New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Detroit. So even just like taking into account who those teams are, it's like certainly Montreal, Pittsburgh, Detroit, I don't think you expected to see at the top of the conference. New Jersey, some people were pretty high on. Then after that, every other team in the conference has 13 or 14 points. The entire rest of the conference is separated by 1 point. Like it's crazy. And obviously the Bruins have still played more games than most at 14 games. You mentioned, 7 regulation losses, tied for the second most in the NHL. That they've won 3 in a row, they still are tied for the second most regulation losses. They also have regulation wins and overtime wins. They are tied for 5th in the Eastern Conference in regulation wins with 5. If you add in regulation overtime wins, which is like the second tiebreaker, they're tied for 4th. They have 7 regulation and overtime wins. So it's like, really what's happening is they've still played 1 or 2 more games than everyone else. And B, they're not going to a shootout. So most of their games getting decided in regulation, and 2 have gone to overtime. So it is just like weird to look at. And I think to me, like the ultimate takeaway is kind of what we've been hammering for a little bit, which is like, you're right in it. Like no one has pulled away. The Eastern Conference is off to a much better start than the West, where there are, I think, like 5 or 6 teams under 500. Yes, 6 teams with a points percentage under 500, which would, so like if the Bruins were in the West, there'd be 6 teams below them. So kind of just like a weird start league wide, which I think if you listen to national podcasts, like that has been a real point of emphasis that everyone's kind of hammering home. And like you'll hear coaches talking about it too. It's just been It's been a very kind of unpredictable, topsy-turvy start to the season. Like games you expect to go one way, some of them are swinging the other way in like blowout fashion. And I think that's kind of a product of starting with so many games in such a short time, which is not really going to let up this season, is teams don't have practice time. So you don't even have, if you're like, oh, we're kind of getting this wrong early on, you don't even really have the practice time to fix it. So teams are just like, everyone is just kind of figuring things out on the fly.
Yeah, McAvoy said, he's like, it feels like Christmas already. That's how many games I feel like we've played so far, but it's Halloween. So just kind of joking about how compact the schedule is. And the losses piled up quick, right? So they've gotten out of it, but it was starting to feel like there was no time to slow it down and take a deep breath and adjust things. Like you said, Scott, eventually they did tighten up the defense, and there's the correlation between Hampus Lindholm being back is undeniable. The defense looks better with him there. And
by the way, just to quickly insert, they're 5-1-0 with Hampus Lindholm in the lineup this season.
Right.
And that's definitely, he's been really helpful in those wins that they've gotten, just making it so that you have two pairs that you can throw out there and trust, rather than either splitting up McAvoy and Zadorov, which I don't think they should do right now that they have the luxury of Hampus Lindholm being back. And it still gives you, Lindholm on a separate pair that's going to be more effective than what you were running out there when he wasn't. So, and Lohrei's been being benched and they've won. So, I mean, that doesn't bode well for him either. When you pulled out of the lineup and the team keeps winning and the defense is doing a better job when you're not in there, that doesn't help you get back in the lineup quicker. Though Jokiharju did have a rough game against Carolina, so maybe he comes in for Jokiharju rather than Aspero, who I think looked really good.
I got some thoughts there as well, because the last name you mentioned, I've liked his game, and I didn't like Jokiharju's game. And there's one school of thought, which is, hey, don't change a winning lineup. But I feel like they won that game against Carolina in spite of Jokiharju. He had multiple grade A turnovers that could have cost the Bruins. But just real quick before we get into the game, that 6-game losing streak, right? You look at the standings right now, and if they just found a way to get 3 of a possible 12 points in those games, right there, they have a little bit more cushion here, right? The point in bringing up the regulation losing streak is that they don't have, and to your point, Scott, no one really has much of a cushion right now, because there are, I want to say, let's see, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams, including the Bruins, in the Eastern Conference with 14 points. The games in hand is not in Boston's favor, but I mean, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 of the 16 teams in the conference have 14 or 13 points. So they're all right there. But if the Bruins just had, a 1-4-1 record or whatever through those 6 games, you're feeling a little bit better. But they have to find a way to, you like to say 500 or better in these next 6 games, because we all know how important American Thanksgiving is as a benchmark for postseason positioning. It's not an end all be all, but it's a nice metric to kind of see where teams are at that point in the year. And if the Bruins have a tough go these next couple of weeks, we know they'll be probably significantly below that threshold. So it's a big month for everybody. I would say it's a bigger month for the Bruins because of just what they have to work with and the regulation losses that they've stacked up so far. So, they got off to October on a good start. So far, November's been off to a good start. I'm sure they hope that the rest of the month goes smoother for them, but they're going to have to earn it because this conference is very difficult, at least right now.
Yeah, the conference is tight. The division is tight. Like, there's, like I mentioned, like there's those 4 teams on top who probably feel pretty good about themselves. Carolina's 7-4. I think they're the only team that's still only played 11 games, so they probably feel good. But everyone else has had these up and downs. Like Tampa's playing well now, but they started really poorly. Rangers have been very up and down. Ottawa very up and down. Toronto struggled. Panthers really haven't found their footing yet. So, like I guess like the Bruins pessimists would look at that and be like, well, a lot of those teams have better rosters than the Bruins, and you expect them to turn it around. But the optimist is, I'm not going to assume that. Like, why would if all these teams are muddled together and been inconsistent so far, why am I going to assume that, teams X, Y, and Z are all going to figure it out and get going, and the Bruins are going to go the other way? Like,
Right.
You shouldn't assume that. And certainly the Bruins themselves are not going to assume that. They're going to look at this and go, hey, we won 3 in a row, 4 out of 5. Why can't we be the team that maybe starts to put a little bit of distance between us and someone else?
And they just beat the Islanders already. They played Toronto very well. Historically, we know that. And the Senators, again, they're without Brady Tkachuk. And if the Bruins play 3 games against Ottawa and they lose 2 or 3 of them, that's a major missed opportunity, especially because Ottawa, outside of the game against the Bruins and then the game prior, I want to say, I forget who they played the game prior, but they put up 7 that night too.
I think it was Washington. They beat
the Caps,
7-1, I think. Yeah.
Outside of those 2 wins, they've been pedestrian at best. And so these are, again, the moral of the story is these are all winnable games. They're also losable games, right? But they're winnable games. So I look at 2 games against Toronto, who's struggling, and the Bruins played them well. And you get 2 games against Ottawa without Brady Tkachuk, and then you get the game against the Islanders, who you've beaten, and then a fun game, I'm sure, is going to be happening in Montreal with a rocking Bell Center playing the Bruins for the first time since Montreal's been good. Those fans are feeling it right now, as they should be. And so, again, I think this is going to be a fun month, and hopefully the Bruins can give us something to write and talk about besides another way that they found a way to lose.
I'm looking forward to that game. I'm going to be heading up for that one. So,
oh hell yeah, that's going to be fun.
Saturday night in Montreal.
Have you seen how well their fans have been traveling to all these away games? I mean, they've been, Montreal travels well. We know that, and they're as passionate of a fan base as there is in the league. But for the better part of the last 10 years, they've obviously been a bottom 10 team in the league, and it's tough to be prideful when your team's that. At least publicly, they'll be home watching every game. But now with all the talent that they have and how well they're playing, they are out in full force. The Olays are out in full force right now.
Yeah. I mean, they even travel to watch their prospects. Like, they'll even travel down to like Hockey East games to watch their prospects play. Like when Lane Hudson was there, they would, like, I would notice French Canadian people in the crowd. Like, they're just there to watch them and see, like, and hope for the future to be better. And now they're kind of seeing it.
December 23rd is their first game in Boston. that's the last game before the Christmas break. I would suspect you'll see a lot of Canadians fans, because you're right. Like, we remember the days where Bruins Canadians in Boston, you get a lot of Canadians fans coming down, and you're right. Like, that has kind of dried up for better part of a decade, where it's like they're not as enthusiastic. The Bruins have been much better, so Bruins fans have no problem filling the building, and Canadians fans just aren't bothering to make the trip down in droves. Like, you'll still see some, obviously, but yeah, I feel like that could be like a real influx.
Maybe being so close to the holiday, people will they'll be traveling, so maybe it'll dissuade some people. But you're right, Scott. You think go back 20 years, right? The Canadians beat the Bruins in the 2002 playoffs. They beat the Bruins in the 2004 playoffs. And then the Bruins have a couple of down years after the lockout. Montreal's still, they're still around. But then that 2007-2008 season, Montreal was the best team in the conference, beat the Bruins 8 out of 8 times that regular season. And the Bruins barely made the playoffs. But during that era, Montreal fans would take over the Garden because Bruins fans had yet to kind of fully come back from what was a dark time in the team's history. But what was cool, and this is why when the rivalry is going, it's so fun. What was cool about that, though, is that as the Bruins started to get better from 2007-2008 through their cup win and then beyond, obviously by the time we got to 2011, there was far less Canadians fans as there were in 2008, because now Boston had kind of risen to the top of the league and were there for a little bit. So that seesaw effect that a rivalry can have when both teams are having their moments at the same time is fun. But unfortunately, the last decade, the Bruins have been strong and Montreal has not been. And now, just as Montreal is getting better, we have a bunch of question marks about the Bruins' future. So hopefully the Bruins can, figure it out and not regress, so that both of these teams can be competitive and we can get this rivalry back in play. Although many people will point out, and I agree with them, the lack of divisional games in the regular season still kind of hinders some regular season animosity from these teams. It really does take these playoff rivalries to get things going. So anyway, there's our Montreal Boston rant for a few minutes.
Well, and it'll come back. Was it November 14th? The game in Montreal. Scott will be there. I will not. So I assume I'm going to be getting just pictures from Scott drinking the beer tower by himself this time. But
you see what
I don't think I'll be tagged on that.
You see what Montreal being good does, though? That this goes to the fact that we're talking about this right now. We haven't talked about the Bruins Canadians on this podcast. We've been doing this for like 4 or 5 years. Outside of you two talking about we're going up to Montreal for a road trip, that's the only time we mention Montreal. But see what happens when Montreal is good. It's good for the league. It's certainly good for the Bruins-Habs rivalry, but the Bruins have to do their part. So anyway, they did play a game recently, so we can go back into that Carolina win, and yeah, I think it's fairly obvious why the Bruins having success right now, and you guys touched on it earlier. It's no secret that the return of Hampus Lindholm has been huge for this defense pair, this team's defense structure, but also with the D pairs, the McAvoy-Zadorov pairing. We've talked about it. It looks great. It looks natural. Scott, you mentioned Zadorov has been the Bruins' best defenseman over the course of the entire season. I would agree with that. He's been the most steady. Charlie McAvoy has also been Charlie McAvoy the last couple of games as well. And I just feel like he's been able to focus on his game rather than his partner's game at the same time. And of course, we mentioned the scratching of Mason Lohrei the last few games. I do see a window of opportunity for him to come back in at the expense of Jokiharju, because I have really enjoyed the effectiveness, the compete, the simplicity of Jonathan Aspero's game as well. Like I don't think he's been somebody who's been, oh yeah, you haven't called his name, so that means he's playing well. Yes, that's most of it, but he's had some one-man rushes up the ice, chock full of second efforts. He's been physical. He's a good skater, and he seems like a player who's at 26 years old, finally getting his chance in the National Hockey League, and he doesn't want to let it go. And I think that there's something to be said about that in a player.
Yeah, definitely. I thought, like, obviously none of us really knew a whole lot about him as a player. He was in the Senators organization for a long time, but never got a look in the NHL.
He was good in camp.
Yeah. And, when I first saw him in camp, what stood out to me was he was one of the more physical players early on. Mm-hmm. Like, he was taking the body and kind of helping to, like, you notice the guys who right out of the gate in camp bring some physicality, because eventually a lot of guys kind of ramp that up. But when it's someone like first day or two of practice, you're like, oh, okay, make a mental note. And he was one of those guys. So in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, that's who Jonathan Aspero is. He's defensive defenseman. He's physical. But you're right. He is a good skater too. And like that I didn't know ahead of time. And it's something that Marco Sturm has highlighted when he's talked about him. He says he's a good skater. He talks about how quickly he closes, which I think you're seeing that really fits the way they want to play in the defensive zone. So yeah, he's doing his job. I think I said on here, like I think it was after his first game, I said there were times that he looked kind of off the NHL pace and like a little behind the play. And I did think that first game. I think he's cleaning that up. Like I think the more experience he gets, the more it looks like he can play in the NHL. So yeah, I'm with you. Like if anyone's coming out, it's Jokiharju at this point. And on McAvoy, yeah, I mean, I tweeted it, but I think these last 3 games have been his 3 best games of the season. And it's not a coincidence that that's coming with a better D partner. And it's not a coincidence that the Bruins are winning with him playing at this level either. Like he's he gets an assist on both goals Saturday. He's up in the rush on the first one, setting up Middlestad at the back door. He has a shot block that helps set up the second one, ends up being Victor Arvidsson breakaway. So just so much more involved and looks so much more confident and just assertive out there.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about being paired with Zadorov and how that's going, and he's just so strong. I'm always impressed with how he handles himself physically, and nobody can knock him, off of his path. You can't really stop Nikita Zadorov from doing what he wants to do because he's just physically too big and strong. And it's totally different than the Mason Lohrei partner, because Lohrei is more offensive and doesn't have that same kind of meanness and strength. Just he's just nobody. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but not many people are built like Nikita Zadorov anyway. But it definitely has made a big difference for McAvoy to be with somebody who he doesn't have to worry about covering up for maybe mistakes or young mistakes or just defensive mistakes. And it's looked a lot better. And I did also think that Jokiharju had some real bad giveaways in his own end in front of the net.
That soft flip, Bridget, from the corner. Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine what you two were saying. I mean,
I think I literally turned to Bridget and was like, "That's the kind of play that gets you benched."
Come on.
Yep. He said that.
It's just such a soft play. You cannot do it. Honestly, and I feel like those are the type of plays that Marco Sturm has sack guys for. So I'm curious to see if Sturm is kind of consistent with how he's been again, or will he just elect to kind of not tinker with the winning lineup, I guess. But he can fall on that sword, I suppose. But I think that's that phrase and sentiment's all well and good. But Jokiharju had some very costly mistakes that, fortunately for him, did not end up in the back of Boston's net, but two of those easily could have. And so it's kind of like when people talk about, should you suspend a player on injury or intent? Should you scratch a player on what could have been or what actually happened, right? I think sometimes mistakes are more egregious than others. I think those were a couple of egregious ones.
Yeah, it's throughout the game, and Scott leaned over to me multiple times and was like, "Well, there's another one." That. There's something else that he could get benched for, and there was I don't know, I want to say 3 times Scott at least was pointing it out. It was just noticeable, and a lot of it was happening right in front of us too. It's just that end of the ice is where they were defending at that point when he was making. But
yeah, also even going back to the Buffalo game, the goal that they challenged for goalie interference, where who was it? Greenway or I forget who pushed him into Korpisalo. But yeah. I said at the time, I was like, I almost, and the goal stood, it didn't come back. But I said at the time, I was like, and I don't think we brought this up on the podcast, I was like, I almost on principle just didn't want that goal taken back, because I thought it was a really soft play by Jokiharju to allow himself to get pushed in. He looked like he was one of those sleds that they use in football camps, and you just slide back. It was no resistance. He just kind of let himself get pushed into Korpisalo. So yeah, so there's been a couple plays recently. I don't, I really haven't. I can't think of anything Jokiharju's done this year that's really impressed me. There's been games where he's been not noticeable for anything bad. There's been games where I think he's been perfectly fine, but you're not really doing anything that's jumping out. And then now in the last couple, you have some really kind of glaring mistakes.
And we touched on it weeks ago. There was a time when we thought Lindholm was coming back into the lineup potentially, and I said I want Jordan Harris in this lineup over Jokiharju. But the saving grace for Jokiharju right now, with his presence in the lineup, is the fact that he's the right shot. And Sturm may be reluctant to go with a left shot in his offside. I don't know, because Aspero is also a left shot, so is Lohrei. So you'd have that same problem as keeping Harrison over Jokiharju. But I'll say this about Jokiharju: when he has time and space, okay, he has decent enough hands. Like he can receive a pass. He doesn't have stone hands necessarily. He can move the puck when he has time. He's not a he's a decent skater. He's for this level, he's like an average defensive skater. I wouldn't say he's a great skater. I wouldn't say he's a poor skater, but he just the unfortunate reality is that it's not a 3-on-3 overtime all game, and it's not pond hockey. Guys are breathing down your neck. They're forechecking hard. They're making you make decisions quicker than you want to, and in those moments, he just to your point, Scott, he doesn't do anything that impresses me. I would say this. You can look at that decor the other night and say, well, we know what Charlie McAvoy does well when he's on his game. He offers solid two-way play, physicality, of course, very, very high-end skating mobility. We know Nikita Zadorov offers elite size and physicality. Also, he's a good skater for his size. We know what Hampus Lindholm brings. Andrew Peeke is one of those guys where he's just at his best. He's just one of those steady defensive defensemen, right? Nothing crazy. Aspero, we talked about it. He was bringing physicality and he can move. What is Jokiharju? What's his strength where it's like that's a Jokiharju type play? Like,
okay, well, I don't know if I can fully answer that. What I was going to say
because it's rhetorical. Like that's my point.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything like that. That separates him from anybody. So if
that's
the case,
it's like Office Space. What would you say you do here?
Yeah. That's a Jokiharju-esque turnover right there. That's wonderful. That's beautiful.
Well, what I was going to say is he's been on the second power play unit pretty much the entire year. Do you think he's used that opportunity to, get? I feel like I don't really notice him on there.
He may have a couple of secondary assists on. Like I don't remember. I don't think he's been great. I don't know if he's been terrible, but I don't see him as a PP guy at all.
It feels like he's there out of necessity as much as anything because they don't have 10 power play guys on this team. So like someone has to be on the second unit. But if he comes out and Lohrei goes back in, then you actually have upgraded your second unit because you put Lohrei and Hampus Lindholm out there, and that's better. Like Lohrai's better on the power play than Jokiharju.
And again, if the issue here is that they can't take out Jokiharju based on play because they don't have enough right shot defensemen in the system, well, then that's a GM thing. Then, like the fact that you can't take out Jokiharju because all of your depth defensemen that you want to plug in are left shots, and now all you have organizationally on the right side right now is McAvoy, Peeke, Jokiharju, and then you got to go down to like Victor Soderstrom for the next right shot. You know what I mean? Where's the right shot depth? If that's a problem to me, then like if you won't put in an extra left shot defenseman that can play their offside because you're afraid of that handedness issue, well, that sucks.
Yeah, I'll try Asper on the right side. I know Mike Callahan has played the right side, and I thought he played pretty well when he was up.
Agreed.
By all accounts, Frederic Brunet is off to a very good start in Providence. Like maybe he's a guy you would try on the right side, although I don't think you would have a Lohrei Brunet third pairing. So maybe that would be like, I don't know, Asper staying up. Maybe you have 8 defensemen. Somehow you can try something there. I have seen like Mark Diver has said Soderstrom's looked good in Providence so far. I was very unimpressed with him in the preseason. So to me, that'd have to be a pretty drastic change in how he's playing from, 6 weeks ago or whatever. Not even 5 weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, in the very short term, like put Lohrei back in, see if he's learned his lessons, and try Asper on his offside.
Can I also just say one thing too? Is that Andrew Peeke, right shot defenseman, not under contract beyond this season. I want him in Boston more than I want Jokiharju. But Jokiharju has another year under his belt at $3 million. Can they move him at the deadline? Can he be one of those guys?
Jokiharju has 2 more years after this, right? That was a 3-year deal.
You're right. It was a 3-year deal. Can you move him? I'd rather I want Peak here than over Jokiharju. Like truly, like if one has to go, I mean, I know who I want to go, but the guy who I want to go is under term for 2 more years after this. Maybe he's a guy that they look to. Maybe somebody out there needs right shot depth or right shot D-man at the deadline. I don't like him here for another 2 years. Just gonna say it. Bridget, you're muted, but I'm sure you're saying. Oh no, we can't hear you. Unless she's miming. Maybe she's miming because she doesn't want to speak bad on Jokiharju.
Is that Bridget or Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah. I mean, we can't hear you right now, Bridget. But while you're figuring out your audio, I mean, Scott, just touch on that element of like, because I think Peak's been good, also for the most part this year.
Yeah, he with the right partner, he has been. Like, I think that the couple times they tried to go back to putting him with Lohrei, that was, it was a pairing that didn't work last year, and I don't think it worked this year. But when you can put him with Elias Lindholm, like, yes, that has worked, and should work. It's not like he's not quite Brandon Carlo. He's more physical. I don't think he's as good defensively. So it's not quite the exact same dynamic, but it's similar in terms of what you're going to ask that pairing to do. And yeah, I think it can be good enough. And when you have Zadorov and McAvoy load like on your top pairing, they can handle tough matchups. Whereas if it's McAvoy with Lohrei, you're trying to shelter it a little bit. Like it just lines up so much better now when it's Zadorov, McAvoy, Lindholm, Peak. You feel pretty good about either one of those pairings really in any matchup. And then you just have to figure out your third pairing behind them. And that can become the pairing that you shelter a little bit. So,
Which ideally I would have Peak on. We talked about that in the offseason. Like I kind of had him as the third right D, and then we hoped that they could find somebody for the top 4 right side, but they ended up re-signing Jokiharju. And then it's like, okay, so which one of these guys is going to be playing out probably outside their comfort zone? And obviously it's Peak, and I think he's been serviceable, right? But I don't think he's a long-term right shot in the top 4, but
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Bridget.
Yes.
Yes, welcome
okay.
back.
So what I was
Jokiharju was cutting her mic so he can stop getting
what I was
get on
say,
this whole
Brian,
segment.
Is that I think in reality you probably end up with both of those. Like you're gonna still have Jokiharju because there's no one else to put there. Like we've had this conversation. He was like the only person available in the off season that they're like, well, we have him. Like we can't. There's none of the free agents out there, that could fit that role are available anymore, and it just what it ended up being, and it kind of feels like that is the same situation they're going to be stuck in probably at the end of the season.
Unless somebody plays their offside for a bit, right? And then you address it in the offseason, and maybe Peak moves down, or you re-sign Peak. I mean, kind of like this is kind of why I bring it up. Like we're talking already here in barely November about trying to have somebody play their offside to replace Jokiharju because he's not playing very well, right? So if this was like if they moved him, let's just say hypothetically around the trade deadline, you'd have to make do for a couple of months, sure. But we're talking about them trying to make do right now without trading him. So I mean, then in the offseason you could try to figure something out.
He was their make do option when they got him.
I know. I didn't like it then either. I mean, I if it means that they don't find anybody in the offseason and somebody's in the offside all year, I'd rather that over what I've seen out of Jokiharju. I mean, that's a Don Sweeney thing. He's got to figure it out. Then draft better on the right side, or find somebody. I don't know what to tell you.
And like this is one of my problems with their offseason in general was the moves they made just because it felt like, well, there's nothing better to do, so we'll do this. And it's like, did this management just want to be able to say we spend to the cap so we're always competitive so they can like flaunt that? Because I think the more prudent approach this season would have been to leave themselves some cap space and see if something better presents itself, whether it's trade, whether you just roll that over to next year. But it was like, all right, there was no better option on the right side, so I guess we'll just re-sign Jokiharju. Cam Neely says they wanted to add more offense. It wasn't out there. So what? So then all right, well, then we'll just spend on our bottom 6 instead. And it's like, all right, cool. So you got within $2 million of the cap, but like for what? Like just filling in guys, just kind of overpaying for depth. Like, I mean, it is what it is. Like they're in the season now, they're in the thick of it. So,
Yeah.
I don't know how much good it does to like rehash all that, but that was kind of like my issue all along was like, why are they spending money on all this depth? Like, I don't know. Like, if you have a couple spots open, fine. Like, let some kids battle for it and see what happens.
Well, I'll tell you why they re-signed Jokiharju as well is because they utilized a second-round draft pick on him that they got in the Trent Frederick trade. So to not re-sign him, it was too convenient to
I think
not
it was
just
the fourth. It was the fourth, not the second.
Did they send the fourth? Okay. All right, well then that's more insignificant. But I still feel like part of him was kind of like, hey, we got to fill this spot with a right shot D-man. And at the same time, we did utilize a pick to get him a few months ago. So it just felt convenient to bring him back, but not necessarily optimal. And if fans out there are hoping that maybe the Bruins can spend money on and bring in Rasmus Anderson in the offseason as a pending UFA, I think, especially if things continue to go the way that they do in Calgary, I think you'll see Calgary probably either extend him themselves or trade him at the deadline for something before because if they're sellers at the deadline, I mean, they have to get something for a guy if they don't think he's going to resign. So I guess my point is, I would be surprised if, I don't think the Bruins are trading for him, and I don't know if he's getting to free agency.
Well,
So
Martin didn't make it to free agency.
Oh, Bridget, we forgot to talk about that last episode.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that. Yeah.
I mean, that's with the salary cap going up, and I promise we'll touch back on this Bruins Hurricanes game at some point. But with the cap continuing to increase and teams having more money to spend on their top players, it's not surprising to see these names go off the board before they hit free agency. We've already seen it with Jack Eichel and some others, but Nate just felt a little bit different because there had been speculation about him maybe not wanting to extend in Colorado long term, and who knows exactly why. We had theorized sometimes these European players like to be on East Coast cities because it's the closest time zone back home to friends and family. That does matter. Sometimes like players like to call their family when they're awake. Like it does make a difference. And something, God forbid, something happens, they can go. It's a shorter flight home, whatever. And Boston's a European style city, and he has some countrymen on his team. There were reasons to think that Nate just could want to come to Boston for a longer term contract, despite the caliber of hockey in Colorado being far better right now. I understand that, but sometimes when you're making career decisions, it's not just about coworkers; it's about fit and whatnot. So I did see an opportunity for that, but stuck a stake in my heart, and he's sticking in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, I wonder how Colorado feels about the way this whole thing played out, going all the way back to last year with Rantanen, where it's like they end up paying Natchez $500,000 less per year than Rantanen got, and it's like, I don't know if they could rewind it all. Do you just extend yourself a little further for Rantanen than they wanted to at the time? But unfortunately, you're right. Like there had been speculation that Nate just wasn't totally happy there. Unfortunately for everyone else, including the Bruins, like whatever issue may have been there with McKinnon seems to be gone because those two have been awesome together this season. And I think, when you have 17 points in 12 games or whatever, you probably look around and go, hey, you know what? This is pretty good. This McKinnon guy, I think I can work with him. Like, yeah, so I don't know. You guys want to fire up the Adrian Kempe hype? Like that's kind of
he's a good player.
He's a good player. I'd take him, but that's kind of like the best that's left of all those big 2026 names. And we're not even a month into the regular season. I said this all along when people were like, save your money for 2026. And I said all along, I was like, those guys aren't going to get there. The list you're looking at in the summer of 2025, that's not going to be the list come summer of 2026. And already it's completely dried up just about.
Yeah. No Eichel.
No McDavid.
No Kyle Connor.
No Natchez. McCarr's next. It's yeah. But honestly, none of those names I saw moving at all, besides maybe Natchez. But back to the Bruins Hurricanes game. One thing I wanted to say: big day for the crew of have Middlestat and Arvidsson play as well as possible before the deadline, and then ship them out, because those two guys, big factors in the Bruins win. Obviously, 2 assists from Middlestat, and Arvidsson obviously with a nice finish as well.
Yeah, goal and an assist from Middlestat.
Sorry, yeah, 2 points from Middlestat, but yes.
Yeah, I mean that line's been good against kind of all expectations. Certainly, better than what I thought. But since Middlestat got healthy scratch, which was October 19th, in that line in 7 games, 66 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time, Bruins have outscored opponents 4-2. Corsi 55%, so that's percentage of shot attempts. Expected goals 61.6%. Sturm's been using them as a matchup line. Like, he's matching them up against top lines, which I would have never in a million years would I have thought, oh, that's a line I actually want to get out there against top lines. And yet that's how Sturm's using them right now, and they're getting the job done. Like, do I expect that to continue all season? I still have to say no. Like, I'm still very skeptical of that line, but with Zacha at center, that gives you more defensive fortitude there. And Middlestat's played well on the wing. Like, I think we wondered, like, can he even play wing? And turns out he's been pretty good there. He talked about it after Saturday's game. He said back in Buffalo, I think it was Granado was his coach there. At times when he would struggle and need to get going, he would move him to the wing, and it usually helped. And like he said, I think I'm pretty good on the boards. Like, he can handle pucks coming up the boards. So it seems to be working, much to my surprise, and probably to a lot of people's surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we had talked about it in the beginning of the season when Sturm and Zacha both had made comments about preferring him to be a center, thinking it was going to mean moving Middlestat down a line and putting Zacha second line C and Middlestat 3C. But instead, he just throw Middlestat over to the wing, and it has worked out better, I think, than people would have thought, just because he hadn't played a lot of wing in a while. Buffalo's going back a while now for him. So, yeah, and Arvidsson's got a great shot. We hadn't seen it. Like, the knock on the way that he's been playing in Boston has been that he wasn't using it. And that shot that he scored on against Carolina was like perfect placement, right inside the post, tucked it in, and it ends up being the game-winning goal. So it was an important one, and both goals are getting scored from that line.
Zacha's been good, guys. He's been good all year. I've liked his. I mean, the goal scoring isn't there. It never really has been with him. He's always been a guy who's had a lot of grade A chances, but man, if he could just finish a couple of more, he'd really be something. I don't know if that's ever going to change with him, but his assists are always there, and his two-way play and situational play, I think it's been excellent. I mean, he's, I think, second on the team in scoring right now with 12 points. Man, he's been good. He's been really good.
He has. He's been very steady out there and consistent, which is really kind of how he's been since he's come over. Just, consistently not gonna make a bunch of mistakes or anything like that. What I was gonna say is, now that Elias Lindholm is injured, and they've been using Kuznetsov as the top line center, which, I mean, good for him. He's centering Geeky and Pasternak. But my original thought was, oh, are they gonna move Zacha up to fill in for Elias Lindholm, who we still haven't gotten an update on? Scott, I don't know if we're gonna get one at practice. Maybe?
Yeah, we'll see. So what we know, and I think this was new even from the last time we recorded, is he's going to miss at least a few weeks, is what Marco Sturm said on Friday. He had an MRI on Friday. Sturm did not have an update on that, at least not publicly with us. on Saturday. So we're recording this just before Monday's practice. I'll be heading over to Warrior for that. So we'll see if we learn anything else then. But, I think obviously what you're looking for in that MRI is like they already know it's at least a few weeks, and you're hoping the MRI comes back and tells you like, yeah, that's the timetable, and it's not something more serious that requires surgery, because then that probably turns into a couple months.
Now, let me ask you guys this. Is there an opportunity for a call-up here? A Matt Poitras type situation if it's a longer-term thing to Lindholm? And I know we have Husnudinov right now with Pastrnak, and honestly, let's give him some runway too. I mean, he has Sturm's trust as far as the details at the NHL level right now, which somebody like Matt Poitras does not have. But I wonder, if Husnudinov doesn't thrive in an offensive role, and Lindholm's out a little bit longer. I mean, Lindholm being out and now Middlestat being at the wing, those are two guys who were in somebody's way, like Matt Poitras. Now, obviously, Zacha moves to the wing, so it's kind of to center, so it's kind of a wash. So now it's just a Lindholm spot. I don't know. I mean, it's something to think about. Obviously, I don't think Poitras's been lighting it up in Providence, production-wise. But it just begs the question: if Lindholm's out for a little bit, you're not going to have Johnny Beecher or Jeffrey Vielle slide into a top 6 center role. So it's either, it really seems like if it's not Husnudinov, it may have to be a call up, right?
Yeah, or you slide. I mean, Geeky also can play center. I'll just put that out there. Like Geeky can play center. You could move Zacha up, and then like rearrange the lines beyond that point. But he's clearly trying to give Husnudinov a chance with Pastrnak for a little bit here.
Well, you need a top 6. You need somebody in the top 6. I'll put it that way, right? So it's either Husnudinov or somebody else.
Yeah, because I think, to kind of build off what we were talking about the second line, like you almost don't want to touch that right now. Like again, just my own feelings is like that feels like you're almost still waiting for that to go sideways at some point. You don't want to you don't want to mess that up on your own, right? Like you take someone off and now, the other two guys lose it. Like that line's going good, so keep it together. So I get, trying Husnudinov, that line was pretty quiet Saturday. Husnudinov, Pastrnak, Geeky. But I'm fine giving it another game or two and like seeing what happens. Yeah, you might have to go to a call-up at some point. Poitras is certainly the name that I think people are going to mention the most. I guess my feelings on that is like, I think Matt Poitras has to force a call-up, and I'm not sure he is at the moment. He has 6 points this season, all assists, but 4 of them came in one game. Since that 4-point game, he has 2 points in 7 games. Like
and a fight.
And a fight. Yeah, he got pretty feisty Sunday.
He's turning into a Bruin, Scott. Turning into a Bruin.
Yeah. So listen, like I'm not opposed to it. Obviously, Poitras has played in the NHL and he's looked good at times. But he's not exactly forcing your hand at the moment. Like Georgi Merkulov has probably been a little better. I don't know how much of an opportunity you want to give him, or if you plug him into your top 6. But
he had a good camp too, for what it's worth.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't get much of a look, but he had a good camp, and he's been okay. He's been good in prop. I mean, maybe he's the guy that you give the first shot to.
Yeah, right? Maybe, or him, or Mate Blumel has 10 points in 9 games. Oddly enough, only 2 goals. Like he was kind of brought in to score goals, but he's doing other stuff. And I was talking to Mark Diver at a college game, I think last week maybe, and he was saying like Blumel's he's kind of doing like a lot of things right. Like he seems to be playing a pretty complete game. Obviously, he's a winger, so that would necessitate, to Bridget's point, like maybe you move Geeky to center and try something like that. Fabian Lysell, 8 points in 9 games. Like he's been pretty good. People won't. Again, these are, I guess, the top 6 guys you would consider putting in the top 6. Like Riley Tufte leads Providence in points, but I don't think anyone's clamoring to give him a look in your top 6. So That's a depth option maybe for you, but I'm not putting him on a line with David Pastrnak.
Yeah, and when we were talking about filling in for Elias Lindholm if he's out for even more than just a few weeks, like Scott said, I think that you're probably not looking at calling up a winger in that situation, just because, like, all right, if Murat doesn't work as a center on that line, then you have to find another one. And like Geeky also hasn't played center in a while. So I just feel like you're more looking to call up somebody who's a natural center, just with the injury being to who it is at
Yeah,
top line center. Like that just, it feels like maybe the thing to do would be probably the most easy thing to do would be to move Zaka if you really needed to, and then middle step back
right.
over, and then like
that's exactly it. You just don't want to do that right now while that line's going, but yeah, at some point you may very well, hey, move Zaka up, middle stab back to center, or maybe even try middle stab Pastrnak. See, like that's something I don't think you've looked at all. Maybe you want to give that a shot at some point.
Yeah, I mean these are all options I don't disagree with, but like if you
who's Nadinov is just a top line center in this league now.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But these are options that I don't necessarily disagree with. But the thought pops into my head of, listen, you're a team that at the NHL level has played 500 hockey. You don't have the most offensive talent in the league. You're down a top 6 forward, and you have what I believe right now is the top team in the American Hockey League with multiple players who are scoring at, point per game clips or better. At what point do you have an AHL team that is good enough and an NHL team that's lacking enough where you can trust a call up? What's the AHL for if you can't have a really strong team with players producing, and then you have one of your guys go down and you need to call somebody up in a pinch? Isn't that kind of part of why you have a minor league system? It's not like the Bruins are the best team in the NHL, guys out for a game and there's no and they have a shit minor league team. Like it kind of seems like the situation, if Lindholm's out for a little bit, bodes well for at least a single call up. What point of organizational depth?
I mean, yes, but like so far it's been one game since the injury, and you have 13 more forwards here who want a spot on your team out of camp. That like, I don't think you don't want to be so quick to be like, well, two of these guys we don't trust to be anything more than scratches, so let's go make a call up. Like who's Nadinov? Like you do want to give him a chance to be like, you know what? He's done everything we've asked of him. He's responded to the scratch well. Like let's give him a chance. Let's see what it looks like. And if 2 or 3 games from now, it's like, oh yeah, he's clearly not going to fit on the first line. Okay, then let's consider something else. Yeah. But I'm just not in a rush to do that, just because, again, like presumably everyone who's here made the team for a reason. So like let the guys who won jobs, whether we think all of them should have or not, like let them show why they're here. And then if you need the help, then go down to Providence.
And I agree. I mean, I'm not talking right now. I agree that right now it should be go with Husadinov and see how it goes, right? I'm more so talking in a few games. If the production's not there, I'm sorry. Hats off to Beecher for making the team, or Vial or whomever, VL. But like you gotta do something at that point. And I'm just saying, if that's the point that they're at, they can't be afraid to do so. I'm not talking right now. I agree. They should stick with what they have right now, especially with they're on a winning streak. I mean, and Husadinov had an overtime goal. He's a part of that. I think he's, you also need some time to acclimate to a new situation as well. So I'm just saying, don't be afraid to call somebody up if it needs to happen. That's all.
Yeah,
I feel like the Bruins sometimes are a little hesitant with that until points in the year where it doesn't really matter so much. They don't like to make bold decisions when it could affect their standings too much.
Sturm kind of laughed at it we talked about this a few weeks ago when it was brought up to, is it time for a call up, which was during the losing streak when the question was asked. And it was like, no, like, this is who we have. This is what we have to make do with, kind of was what the sentiment was at the time. Obviously things change when it's an injury that you're trying to fill in for rather than, doing it to shake up a roster. But can we just sidebar real quick about how hard Murat went for Halloween?
This was, yeah, man. I was like,
he's a star.
He really is.
He's an absolute star.
I feel like he might have thought the actual only goal of Halloween was to scare people.
Yeah, his first costume, he went out 2 different times. Well, he went with Zadorov the first night with his family, dressed up as the scariest thing I've ever seen, some sort of skeleton thing. I don't know. He was really creepy. If I was a kid and I saw him, like, I'm not a horror movie person. I was always afraid of different things on Halloween. I would have been like, okay, Mom, going home. Don't want this guy. It's scary. And then the second night was, I think a lot of the guys got together, and he was dressed as the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, and he had the full face makeup. Like, he looked like Johnny Depp. Like, the makeup that he had on was professional, and he had the wig and the hat and everything. And I'm just sitting here going, he's really does have some main character energy.
The first costume he wore was the scariest thing I've seen since the Bruins post-deadline roster last year. It was up there with that. But you bring up Husnudinov, and it's not to be lost in this. I've said this before. He himself, he's only 23 years old. Everybody talks about Patra and Merkulov, bring up the kids. Husnudinov's younger than Merkulov, right? So let's not lose sight of that. I mean, he is a young player getting an opportunity here, right? And I think it's lost how young he is. He might be a year older than Patra. So he's one of those
already
players.
married too, though.
He's younger than Blumel. He's younger than Steves. He's younger than Merkulov. He might be the same age as Lysell, or maybe whatever. So he is one of the kids. Play the kids. He is one of the kids. So is Minton. Everybody talks about Minton being, the kid on the roster. I mean, Husnudinov is also not too far away from that either.
Yeah, I think people I think a lot of fans have their favorites, and probably because they've been around longer. Like in the case of Patra, and you're right. There's almost this element of play the kids. No, not that one. And it's yeah. I don't know. Maybe Husnudinov and Minton are just better. Let's see.
And Minton had the costume this week, which was the lobster. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
The Bruins made him dress up like a lobster for something. I don't know. He was forced to be a lobster at one point this week.
I like Pasternak.
Yes, he was Kevin from
Home Alone. Went all out, shaved his beard and everything. And
yeah, my mom, I showed her the picture. She's like, I had no idea that was him. It didn't look like he completely transformed into Kevin, which is obviously still playing off the joke that was it Fanatics or whatever put his name as Kevin Pasternak for the jersey. So yeah, it's funny. He's leaned all the way into that.
Yeah, McAvoy and Swayman and their significant others went with the Wicked theme, which McAvoy also. So every game they do Bruins beats on the Jumbotron, and a different player, picks a song or whatever. And McAvoy's was from the Wicked soundtrack. So I'm like, he might just be a giant Wicked fan, or at least his wife has gotten him into it.
Big month for releases. Wicked comes out, and Wicked 2 comes out in theaters. And for those sci-fi fans like myself, Stranger Things final season comes out, part 1 the day before Thanksgiving, and then part 2 is Christmas. And then, in case anybody has no plans on New Year's Eve, the finale comes out that day. So but anyway, yeah, that's our oh god. All right, one last thing. I put this online, fashion segment. I put this online.
Okay.
Somebody needs to put an end to these dark helmets on white uniforms trend that certain teams in the league are trying right now. If you're the San Jose Sharks and you have a teal helmet and you want to wear it with your white jerseys, I prefer the white helmet, but it looks cool. If you're the Anaheim Ducks with your orange helmet, You want to wear it on your white uniforms. I'd rather the white helmet. It at least works. If you're the Washington Capitals with a navy blue helmet on the worst white jersey in the league, or the Ottawa Senators, who has one of the cleanest white uniforms in the league, and then wears a black helmet with it, or anybody else who wants to get funny with this, you got to cut the shit. You seriously have to stop it. It's getting ridiculous. I blame the Carolina Hurricanes for starting this trend. The Carolina Hurricanes started this shit like 4 years ago with their red helmets on the white jerseys, and I thought everybody would look around the league and say that looks so stupid. No, you have some teams that are saying, oh, huh, what drug is that? I want to hit of that too. It's getting ridiculous. Cut the shit. Stop it.
Yeah,
go home.
I'm with you, and just quickly, my own little fashion 2 cents. The Bruins have seen some truly atrocious jerseys over this last week.
God.
Those Carolina roads, horrendous. Those Ottawa alternates that they wore, like, terrible. Just going back like a week and a half now, but when the Ducks changed to all this orange, and Brian, maybe you might disagree here. Like,
no, I agree with you.
Everyone's like, oh, this is a big upgrade over like the black that they were wearing, and it was an upgrade. But now that like I've seen them enough, I'm like, these still suck.
I'm telling
you, the orange, like it's still bad.
I'm telling you, the white helmet would have made it look way better. I'm telling you, it's too much orange with the yellow, with the orange helmet, because you have the orange shoulder yokes and the orange pants. It's too much. It's too much. Somebody put an end to this, please. Somebody responded to me in my comments with the New Jersey Devils doing it like 2 years ago. They tried it for a game with the black helmet, and they never did it again. Just please stop. Seriously, like, you want to do it in junior hockey, high school hockey, college hockey. Honestly, it looks fine in those settings because players have cages. There's something about the no cages, no bubble shields. The fact that it's the pros, it just looks bad. It just looks bad. Stop it. I'm done.
Scolded. You've been warned.
Bridget, what's your fashion take of the week?
I got nothing. I never do.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Well, all I know is we got to get this fixed so that Brian can finally get a good night's sleep again, because he hasn't been able to.
Anyway, okay. Well, enjoy the Bruins and the Islanders on Tuesday. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.